So it's been 2 years since the last update on this tank of mine, and during that period this tank basically hasn't had a water change. It wasn't something that I'd planned to do, so it was, for anyone that's been in this hobby long enough, I suppose you kind of fall in and out of love with it, to be fair. And you know, life goes on, and sometimes you get a bit bored. And yeah, this tank basically has just run itself for 2 years. Now there is some caveats on this. I'm not here trying to say this tank looks amazing, don't do water changes. I'm just showing off this tank, and it just so happens it hasn't had a water change for like 2 years for a number of reasons, and it was running itself. Now there are some caveats to that. This tank, obviously, for me to be doing this video, I suppose, you know, I'm sort of back in the game, so to speak. I'm back interested in the hobby, and you know, it has had a clean and it has had some work done to it, and it wasn't looking quite like this. But you know, even with that being said, the reality is this hasn't had a water change for 2 years, and it has been running itself. And I wasn't testing, I wasn't doing anything. I literally was, you know, I run ATI Pro on it, and you know, when I did eventually do a test on this tank, you know, I'm surprised it was still alive. Like literally, it's a bad thing to say, but you know, like my salt was running at like 1.30 instead of like 0.25 or 0.30. It was like, it was just off the scale. Like my alkalinity was at 6, calcium was at like 280. It was just horrendous. Now, you know, I'm not saying, you know, it's not something I'm proud of. It's just the reality of that's where I was at with it. I was cleaning the tank, I was doing stuff to it, but it just, you know, like if you look at it now, like the back's fully clear. I've got a thing about having, you know, clean tanks. I know it sounds bizarre, but I do, you know, when I am doing it, I do like the tank to be clear. So I don't like all coralline on the back and all that kind of stuff, but it was full of it, to be fair. So, you know, there is a caveat. I've sorted the tank out, I've spent some time on it. But if we just have a zoom in, during that period that I wasn't looking after it, you know, I did start to lose some coral. So like this, you can't really see it, but this hammer was massive, and that started to die off. I've lost a few heads here. And so I'm not trying to advertise, no water changes by the way. I'm just amazed at the tank looks how it does, with the fact it's not had water changes. Like, and again, I'm not sitting here going, this looks amazing. I don't think it doesn't, but I'm just saying, like, it's mad, because you do hear a lot like water change, water change, water change, but you know, I haven't done any. All I did was been filling up the ATO. Obviously everything's back now, so obviously I've sorted everything out. All the parameters are how they should be, but I've just, for a while now, I've been thinking, you know what, maybe I should just do a little video. I've not done nothing for years, and the tank was sort of doing its own thing, and it's like, I'm quite happy with it. It's mad, like I was having so many issues with the tank, and now, you know, back in the game, I'm looking, I'm like, you know what, it's not too bad. It needs some fragging going on, that's for sure. So if we look, I mean, sorry about the lights, you know it's like I film these on the phone, so, but all of that dark area under there, that's obviously all dead coral as it's grown, so I need to chop the hell out of this. So although I'm quite happy with the way it looks at the minute, obviously I know that once I hack it, it's going to go backwards again, and you know, I'm going to start buying some corals and stuff again. I've got some more fish in quarantine. You know, I've got 5 fish in here. I've got a couple of tangs, 2 wrasses, and you know, the usual up in the corner. Powder blue, Melanaris, got a coal eye. You know, I've had ick in this tank before. It's run fallow. Yeah, I've got videos about that, so you know, I think we're all right for that. So that, make sure you quarantine. But you never know. Quarantine's a funny thing. I could put some new fish in here, and I could have a nick blowout. These things happen in this hobby, and that's the thing with this hobby. There's ups and downs, and sometimes the downs just hit the downs, and you get bored with it. But you know, that's okay. That's just the way it is. You see that a lot, to be fair. People come and go on YouTube, but this video is, I suppose, just a quick look at my tank. And the fact that you can get away with doing no water changes. I just don't do it like I did it, like actually testing stuff. I mean, even when I tested like my nitrates, they were in at like almost 0. My phosphates were 0, which is bad, so I've started heavily feeding. But it's just like, I just can't believe that that was going on and I was doing absolutely nothing with this tank. Yes, light, there's hardly any fish in there. But I don't know, it's a bit amazing. I just didn't think it would look like this after 2 years and keep banging on just not doing a water change. I think you should do water changes. I think what had happened is this tank had reached a point where it'd been running for a couple of years. It was sort of hit its equilibrium and it was ticking over on its own. But I think also, you know what, you can do quite a lot of damage faffing around with tanks. Constantly changing things, constantly changing, dosing this, dosing that, feeding this, feeding that. Things start to go wrong and then you don't know what's caused the issues, and then, you know, and that's it. And it's almost like this tank did better with me just leaving it the hell alone. And you do hear that sometimes. You do hear people say just leave your tanks alone, but you know what it's like in this hobby. It's hard, especially if you're into kit and stuff. It is quite difficult. I did also update, like, you know, I stripped the whole tank out and did lots of work on it. Changed loads of stuff, especially in the sump area. I used to run an Apex. I pulled that out because I just didn't get on with it. And I might do a video on that, on what I've done underneath it in the engine room, so to speak. But, you know, this is just a really quick overview of where my DD Reef Pro 1200 is at the minute. Where it's just, you know what, it's right. I clean the glass, I top up the ATO, I clean my skimmer and change my socks. You know what, sometimes they go 2 weeks without being changed. My nitrates at the minute are like 3 and my FOS is about 0.03. I'm not running anything except a bag of carbon and GFO. I've got a reactor, but it's not on at the minute. It's not needed. I'm not, you know, I don't want it right low because that causes problems with dynos, which I think I've had in the past. But yeah, everything's ticking over okay. Not bad at all. So yeah, this ain't a clickbait thing. The tank's not, I've not changed the salt in this tank for 2 years. And it's doing okay. The ATI Pro is obviously putting stuff in there it needs to. It's hot here in England, so, you know, some of these, I do lose corals every summer, like bits of them, and so some of these aren't as colourful as they might be in a couple of weeks, to be fair, especially that there. But it's hot here, and we do suffer from it. I've got a fan running, but ultimately, you know, it is what it is when it gets hot. I've noticed that now the last 3 years, every summer. You know, so like this is as bad as the tank's going to look, to be fair, because it does this time of year. But yeah, just a quick update from me after 2 years out of retirement. Just on a little sneak preview. But yeah, just, you know, this is the tank after 2 years. No water changes.